there are some lies in our science books. Taught it for 15 years. Even though I'm not teaching it anymore, I still like the study. It's so many neat things to learn. We're going to cover some of that tonight.
Perception is being managed. We are being steered and guided by a hidden hand.
The whole world has been duped by the media that is not real.
Smart thinking, possible time traveler, smart thinking.
That night, boom, contact memory.
And then, Alex, if you don't agree, you'll be sent to a re-education camp.
Just because I'm old doesn't mean I've lost my touch with the ladies.
A lot of people here tonight felt like they lost. You know why?
Now, experts are suggesting that we're in a golden age of shape-shifting reptilian sightings. Now, why is that?
I was, and still am, a huge conspiracy guy. I literally ran out of new tin hat topics to research.
It was most definitely not capable of melting steel.
Then I would be a crackpot if I thought that was the case.
Thought that was the case.
Welcome to the Hypothetical Institute, a podcast about conspiracies.
My name is Luke.
I'm Cam. I'm Salty.
I like to draw things. We bloody got him.
Got him. No Salty today.
Yeah, he might pop in later on. We're not sure. Anyway, Cam, how are you, baby?
I'm good. It's pretty early in the morning. I am recalling in our last conversation with Salty, he did use the phrase, I'm not a morning person.
I mean, do you want to disclose what you're considering early in the morning?
It's 10 a.m.
Yeah.
On a Sunday.
Yeah, I guess that is, I mean, yeah. A little bit early. That's fair. 12 p.m. for me, but I finished work after midnight last night, so I'm a little bit tired. Had a couple of good cups of coffee, though, so I'm ready to go.
Alrighty. This week we are revisiting the Las Vegas shooting, the Mandalay Bay Hotel shooting, the Harvest Festival shooting. It's got a lot of different names. We did talk about this in 2017. I think only a few weeks after it had happened. Yes.
So, it's kind of weird revisiting this because not much has changed.
Yeah, the sort of the thing that's really stuck out about it at the time was and a lot of commentators and a lot of like the law enforcement people commented on this was, normally when there's any sort of tragedy like this, there's a school shooting or there's a terrorist attack, and this was sort of like a combination of all of those things. You know why it happened. Like you might not like the answer because the answer might be, I was bullied, or but there'd be some sort of indication about why the incident had happened. And in this, there just wasn't anything. You didn't leave a note. You didn't have a manifesto. There was a page with numbers written in the room, but there was nothing else to indicate why he'd done it. He hadn't really talked to anyone about it. And so, yeah, there was just this big empty space that was waiting to be filled up, as we've discussed previously many times.
Yeah, I think I remember at the time, and I can't remember if we talked about this on the first show, how I kind of was watching a lot of Alex Jones at that point and seeing how he filled that space in real time with his own half-truths. So, like, he started off by saying, this has happened, and I'm getting, reports from insiders that there's Antifa propaganda, like, all over the room, and maybe ISIS are involved. That's what people are saying. And then, like, 2 days later, after, saying that for just kind of extrapolating on that for 2 days, he was just saying that's confirmed. We've got confirmed Antifa. We've got, like, so, like, he invented something, completely fabricated it. And at the start, it was clear that, it's unconfirmed. This is rumor that we're hearing now. And then within 2 days, this is 100% what happened. Despite no other information, nothing had changed. It's just what he had convinced himself over that course, which is kind of it's interesting because, you're seeing someone fill that void because he's on air constantly. You're just seeing that happen in real time. Like it's that void filling in personified, essentially.
Well, one of the things that sort of drove the Antifa angle was there was a Facebook page for like Melbourne Antifa, like Melbourne here in Australia. And it was a fake Antifa page. So at the time and for a little while afterwards, there were all of these fake Antifa Twitter and Facebook accounts that were trying to stir up trouble. They'd be like, oh, we're going to go protest at this Confederate statue. And all of these right-wingers would go out to it. And, there was no one there because no one was ever going to protest it. And, this was one that was set up for Melbourne, Australia. And they posted like some comment like, we support our brother, Stephen Paddock, who we've been in contact with, or something along those lines, basically endorsing the attack and saying that, this guy was Antifa. And like, firstly, it was so ridiculous. But secondly, it took about 5 seconds to determine that this page was not on the level, because I think it was one of those ones that wasn't that committed to the bit.
Yeah.
They're like,
right.
We're Antifa. And then like the next post be like, Antifa suck, right?
Yeah.
But that was good enough for the Daily Mail. And so I think that was one of those things where something gets laundered into not the mainstream media, but in, the main commercial media.
Yeah.
And it then becomes rock solid. Because it's it's on a website that gets millions of views, and so then it spreads out.
The Antifa thing is still popping up around this as well. Like, even though this guy has clearly nothing to do with Antifa, Stephen Paddock, the guy that did it, like he was a gambler, I don't know, just like an American guy, basically. Just a pretty, I think he was pretty right-wing, wasn't he? He was a Trump guy.
Well, no, so that's the thing, all his family members said he wasn't that political.
Right.
So he was just a guy. He worked for the IRS for a while. Then he worked, I think, for Lockheed Martin. And then he got into real estate.
Classic Antifa path, working for the military-industrial complex and real estate.
Well, I mean, there are a few big Twitter accounts that might fit into that category.
As I said that, I realised there was that whole thing, wasn't there? It's probably a different episode. So I came across this guy who was kind of pushing, he's quite recently, up in I think a few months ago, pushing the Antifa theory, and he published a report that provides evidence for multiple shooters that it was Antifa and ISIS. This guy's name is Patrick Howley. Have you ever heard of this guy, Cam?
Tell me more.
He's kind of a Breitbart guy. One of the just kind of like mid-level, would love to be an Alex Jones, but just doesn't have the energy, and is just kind of like super white nationalist, racist in anything he does. I started watching his video about this, and he started talking about Bill Gates. This is unrelated to the Las Vegas thing, so I don't know why he was talking about it, but he said, today Bill Gates is having a bad day. He did his little TED talk in Toronto, and he continues to inflict himself on us. And which I think is kind of funny, because I never hear anything about Bill Gates except from people like this.
Yeah.
These guys are constantly inflicting Bill Gates into my life. But then he went on to talk about how, Antifa and ISIS were allegedly involved in this whole plot, which was what Alex Jones started, pretty much day one. I looked into this Patrick Howley guy a little bit further. He's been in trouble earlier this year, he went on a racist rant, this is according to Wikipedia, regarding a black dude hosting the Country Music Awards. Mm-hmm. He says, no offense, you'll have hip-hop, basketball, just fly with your flock, bro. And then in May, just a month later, he accused Lizzo of advancing hostile agitation against white males on behalf of Jewish interests, because the record label she is signed to is led by a Jewish male.
I wonder what he thought of the whole Lizzo flute conspiracy.
Oh, my God. There was another article kind of talking about him as well that was pro him. Basically, they're saying part of their reasoning as well is that pretty much every mass shooting in America completely takes over the news cycle and is used to demand disarming the public. We still hear about Sandy Hook, and it's been a decade. We keep getting that obnoxious loser David Hogg shoved in our face again and again. This is Stu Peters. And they're saying, why don't we keep hearing about this Las Vegas one? But we do. There's like heaps of news coverage about it recently.
Yeah.
Again. And also, like, because we don't really know, we talked about it, there's nothing to really talk about.
Yeah.
Like, a guy shot a whole bunch of people. And when I say nothing to talk about, I don't want to I don't mean to diminish what happened, but they immediately changed. I think Donald Trump changed the bump stock, the automatic weapons, or the whatever you add to a gun to make it shoot like a machine gun. So things did change pretty quickly. And then what else do you talk about?
Well, but the other thing is that wasn't a huge change.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
Like that didn't really solve the problem. It didn't really affect any, if you're in the bump stock industry, I'm sure it was big news.
Yeah.
But for the overall multi-billion, trillion-dollar arms industry, I think it was a bit of a drop in the ocean.
And if you're in the bump stock industry, you probably have a diversified portfolio of other gun accessories.
Yeah. So it didn't really change anything. It wasn't something that had any impact, like didn't stop mass shootings. So yeah, it just I saw a lot of people being like, yeah, it went down the memory hole. It's like, yeah, it did, because nothing changed. And this was, I think we probably talked about this in the last episode where we were talking about Sandy Hook as well. After Sandy Hook, people were like, well, if this doesn't change things, what will? And I think people also thought that about the Las Vegas shooting, because they're like, it's not, kids in a school getting shot. This is, these are Trump people. These are Trump's people getting killed. Maybe this will move the needle a bit, but it didn't really move the needle at all.
Another reason why Sandy Hook's still in the media is because of the same people that are saying, why isn't this in the media, are pushing Sandy Hook into the media constantly.
Yeah.
It's the number one Sandy Hook story is Alex Jones.
Yeah.
Now, that's why it's there. And also since 2017, a lot has happened.
Yeah, some things have gone down.
It's been a pretty tumultuous time.
So, yeah, that was one theory, that it was ISIS and Antifa teamed up. The other main theory that I still see getting pushed quite a bit is that it was like an arms deal gone wrong.
Yeah, like a Saudi arms deal, right?
Yeah. And I still see this, and it's like the arms deal went wrong, and someone was shot in the room, and then they're like, how do we cover this up? Let's just start opening fire on the crowd below. And that's the explanation for why there were so many guns in the room.
So, and a Saudi, and I didn't look in this time, so I might have some details wrong, but didn't someone hire out the entire floor above it, or have, rented the rooms above it? That was a Saudi guy? Was that where that came from?
It might have been, but I think it might have also just sort of come out of nowhere.
Yeah. And there was rumors of helicopters, they'd helicoptered off the roof afterwards, and that was a distraction. You distract things by just opening fire on a whole lot of people.
Yeah. I did see it's one of those things where it's like you start to look into the subreddits and the forums about this, and you just come across the people who have their own little thing. And I saw someone being like, if you think it's the Saudis, you're so narrow-minded. Obviously, it was a blackmail operation where they just had like 50 people in the room, each shooting one bullet. Each shooting one clip, and then they can blackmail those people. And it's like, what the fuck are you talking about? But this person didn't even have to explain that, because they've got constructed such an elaborate operation in their mind that it's just obviously it was the blackmail operation.
It's kind of the same premise as a firing squad and only one has a live bullet. Kind of the reverse of that, essentially.
The opposite.
Yeah. But everyone is complicit by a kind of association, but no one's completely to blame.
And now you can now that you've done that, you can get those people to do anything.
Yeah.
Even though you clearly already had something on them that you could get them to commit murder.
Just pull this trigger and fire into the crowd. Uh-oh, got you now. And now the person behind you, did you see that? The Islamic State one, or ISIS, they tried to claim responsibility. Do you remember that happening?
Yeah, so it was like an ISIS media, maybe a Twitter account or just some sort of media outlet for ISIS. They were like, yep, this was us. And all of the ISIS watchers are like, ISIS never lies. It's like, I don't know if they're above lying. They do some pretty bad stuff.
Yeah.
And it's like, they do lie because they didn't provide any evidence. And there was no evidence.
No, not at all.
And like, normally when someone does something, there'll be like a thing where they say, they put out a video saying this is for ISIS. So that you don't have these conversations. I think ISIS likes, they like to actually claim credit for things that they do.
Mm.
So this seemed like, we forgot to do the video. Oh, we'll just put out a tweet. No.
Yeah.
But there's been a whole bunch of times, I think, where ISIS or different terrorist organizations have claimed attacks. They're just getting quick. They're like, this was us. No, it wasn't.
Yeah, it helps their cause if everyone's confused and scared of them rather than someone else.
Yeah. They're so honest, though. They've got so much integrity.
Old honest ISIS. What are they up to these days? Still going?
Still going, I think. It's nice that they laid off over COVID.
I feel like another thing that COVID managed to sweep under the carpet was ISIS. So I did a bit of a deep dive, somewhat of a deep dive, as much as I could, into the Australian guy that was there.
Brian Hodge.
Yeah, did you look at Brian Hodge?
I did have a little go. He's got the most Australian name.
Yeah,
doesn't get much better. G'day, it's Brian Hodge here. But I don't think he talks like that at all.
No. So Hodgie, so there's been a lot of conspiracy stuff about him. He's kind of been wrapped up as like potentially an FBI agent, potentially his handler, Stephen Paddock's handler, or like above the FBI and like they're on a black op. And, so many like the stories that he was telling afterwards were so inconsistent. He's got all these kind of things that he said that weren't true in the media, or he mistakenly said them. And it's kind of created this whole like, mythos around what he could be.
So he was like staying on the same floor as Paddock.
Yep.
But he did say at one point in an interview, I was like next door to him.
Yeah.
But that's, that was one of those things where it's like, if you're in a hotel and you're a few floors down, you're next door to everyone.
Yeah. He was on the same floor though, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's fine. You can say next door. I say like 4 houses down are my neighbors. Like it's the same thing, right? You just kind of, while it's not your immediate neighbor, it's still your neighbors.
Yeah.
Speaking of neighbours, Brian Hodge was never actually on Neighbours, but he was on Home and Away
and Heartbreak High,
which I could only find on his website. I couldn't actually find any evidence of it, like on IMDb or anything.
I did see a reference to it in a New York Times article, I think it was.
Yeah,
and they're pretty strict with the fact checking. Although, how much? Do you reckon
hasn't New York Times famously? Didn't they have a reporter for ages that was just making stuff up? Was he working for the New York Times?
Are you talking about Stephen Glass?
Maybe.
Hang on, let's just do a quick fact check.
Let's fact check the New York Times.
Jason Blair. That's who you're thinking of.
Yeah, Jason Blair. Famously had a whole career being a plagiarist for the New York Times. So, it's possible they did what we did, Googled him and find his website that says he was on Home and Away and Heartbreak High. I'm not saying he wasn't on it, but doesn't look like it was a feature of his career in any way.
I think the New York Times fact-checking department is pretty famous. I think maybe after Jason Blair, they turned the heat up. I was quoted in the New York Times sort of recently, last year, maybe. And I got fact-checked, like, for heaps of stuff. They checked my facts.
Yeah,
It was really annoying. It was like,
but I mean,
trust me,
Cam, you're a pretty well-known charlatan. Like, being a charlatan is kind of your online brand.
Is it?
Yeah. And you know that. Let's not pretend.
That's fair.
The Jason Blair thing, I thought that was more recent. Maybe I'm thinking of something else. Anyway, that's beside the point.
Yeah.
So this Brian Hodge fella, I also on his website where he mentions he was on Home and Away. He's got because he used to work for casinos in Gold Coast and doing like I think producing or event management and stuff. and on his website, which I think is in Comic Sans, implementation of world-class concert performances, including Michael Bolton, Tony Bennett, Kelly Rowland, Seal, Burt Bacharach, Emmylou Harris, X Factor, Human Nature, Jay Sean, Kings of Leon, Rihanna, Mariah Carey, Rod Stewart, Jerry and the Pacemakers, Village People, Boyz II Men, Don McLean, Joan Collins, Hale and Pace. It's funny. Frankie Valli, Benji Madden, Robin Williams, Engelbert Humperdinck, Barry Humphries, Macy Gray, Smashed Mouth, to name a few.
Yeah. Who are you not naming in this list?
It's such a funny list to me because if you just had Rihanna, Mariah Carey, and like Kelly Rowland and Seal, that's a cool list. You don't need anyone else mentioned. Just like if I saw someone you just have Rihanna in there, Rihanna and Kings of Leon, Mariah Carey. Oh, amazing! But before them, he's got X Factor, Burt Bacharach, which I guess he's a big deal, and then comedy duo Hale and Pace.
Also, this list, it's like, oh yeah, we've got Engelbert Humperdinck, Barry Humphries, Macy Gray, Smash Mouth, to name a few. Like, what else is there?
Yeah, who
have you left off the list that has Engelbert Humperdinck and Smash Mouth?
Well, if further on his website, on his CV page, he's got a bullet-pointed list of entertainment relationships, and some of the people he didn't mention include Snoop Dogg, Flo Rida, Vanilla Ice, Flo Rida again, Jabberwockies, Rock Nation, Nick Cannon. So he's got a few.
I will say this isn't Comic Sans, but it's very Comic Sans adjacent.
Yeah. I think when I pasted it into the document that I'm reading off it, the closest one might have been Comic Sans.
You could use this in a comic.
You could definitely use this in a comic. So this fella, Brian Hodge.
Yeah, maybe go over some of the other things he said.
Yeah, we're just ripping on this guy that was like in a pretty traumatic event. But he kind of, as soon as this happened, so he was out for dinner when all this took place. And he was, I think, going back to his room when the cops intervened and said, hey, you can't go back to your room. I think he might have made it up to his floor. You need to get out of here. And so he got out of there and then immediately inserted himself into the story by posting up on Facebook and I think allegedly contacting Australian media saying, hey, I'm available for interviews. In less than 24 hours, he was doing current affair and things like that. So it looks like he kind of, look, the cynic in me says he parlayed this as an opportunity to become a media guy. I don't know. Is that fair or unfair, Cam? Am I being cynical?
I don't know. It's sort of tricky. I did see some of the reporting about how he like got into the media so quickly was like, because of all of his connections. It's like, you don't have to be that connected to know someone at a current affair.
So what's happened there, though, is he started just immediately talking to the media and saying multiple shooters. He's saying, I was staying next door. He said he hid in some bushes. And all of that, wasn't really true. And so people started pulling at those threads and saying, wow, how did this guy say there was multiple shooters? How did this guy hide in the bushes when the FBI or the cops have said there were no bushes around? So he's sort of spoken in that panic in that moment and some, just freely. And then it's just become, that's why he's, that's why people now think he's a liar and he works for the FBI and all that stuff.
Yeah, because the fact was what we do know is that he did go up to the floor where he was staying and where people were being shot on the floor. And then he's, but they've sent him away. Yeah. But he has briefly come into mortal peril.
Absolutely.
Within inches of it. And then he's gotten away. And then, he's probably sort of, ducked behind some stuff. It's not, maybe it's not hiding in the bushes, but it's sort of adjacent to hiding in the bushes.
Yeah. I think there was trees was maybe the actual thing. But
it's close enough that you could say, oh, I was hiding in the bushes. And you could be like, well, actually, that's not a bush, that's a tree. Yeah. Or you could be like, yep, you were hiding behind foliage.
What is a tree if not a large bush with a trunk?
Exactly.
From the True Pundit, they had some details disclosed by Hodge that apparently no one outside the investigation knew about. For people that don't know, True Pundit's a cooked site. The same man, this is a bullet point, same man who described to news media minutes after the attack in detail the tools in Paddock's suite used for the attack days before such physical evidence was released to the public. It's a confusing sentence. The same man who went to great lengths using techniques few would know or employ absent training to mask his phone and social media accounts to shield his location before and during the attack. So what they're saying is he hid his location.
Yeah, but he didn't have location sharing on his posts.
But he didn't. He live posted on Facebook. He's detailed the path that he took down to the bushes / trees.
The foliage.
I think he just made his Instagram private.
Yeah.
But like
a spy would.
Yeah. He was giving, as I said, he's literally giving media interviews within hours of it happening. He wasn't masking himself or his location. The same man FBI agents were never allowed to interview and told to forget about, despite pleadings from intelligence veterans that this individual was an imperative person of interest in the shooting investigation. This is a quote from an alleged FBI insider. He began deleting his online DNA, so to speak. Even though we were told not to, we were able to recover many things that were deleted. Yeah, I think he just made his account private.
Yeah. So this is the thing, though. There's like FBI insiders, and Alex Jones had his insiders. There were a bunch of like ex-intelligence guys who sort of lost their minds over this incident. There was an ex-CIA guy, and maybe the other main fellow was ex-FBI, but they had gone all in on the ISIS thing. And yeah, Brian Hodge sort of became the main character in their narrative. He was like the ISIS connection.
Yes.
And they made a dossier that they were sending to everyone. They were sort of ignored by everyone. Tucker Carlson had looked at it, and it got spiked. Tucker Carlson, they say Tucker Carlson was all in on doing it and that his bosses spiked it. Tucker Carlson was like, oh no, there just wasn't enough evidence to go ahead with it, which doesn't seem like a very Tucker Carlson thing to say.
Yeah.
They were convinced that Brian Hodge was like some sort of ISIS operative, and they had this dossier that had like all of Brian Hodge's personal information, like addresses and things,
right?
That was then leaked publicly. And so Brian Hodge was like getting massively hassled. And I think your friend Laura Loomer was obsessed with Brian Hodge as well.
Not sure how she's my friend, but yep.
Oh, just because you like talking about her.
I do like talking about her. She's one of those figures that just amuses me to no end. Some of the evidence they had in the dossier was he holds anti-right-wing views because on his Facebook he had supporting left-wing issues such as transgender rights, supportive gay marriage, and he allegedly ate a Turkish doner kebab at a restaurant in New Mexico.
That's right.
Days after the attack.
I think that was the main ISIS connection as well, that he'd had a kebab, and he hadn't even had the kebab.
Except that even that is untrue, according to Hodge, who insists he never travelled to New Mexico, much went to the restaurant. I think this was from Politico. I didn't actually note down where I copied that from, but I didn't have time, or I wasn't able to find the doner kebab photo to prove whether or not he was eating it. Because I would like to see this photo. I'd like to see this evidence, and know that, is it him or not?
Yeah.
Brian Hodge, doner kebab. I'd like it. I'd love a bloody kebab right now.
Yeah, just the perfect thing after a big night at the brewery.
Absolutely. I just Google imaged it. Brian Hodge, doner kebab. Nothing.
Yeah.
Not an image. Not as in it's got some related searches, but no photos. Not anything, which is kind of suspect.
Yeah, I just Google image searched Brian Hodge kebab, and there's even less. So I don't know what that tells you.
Hang on, this is bigleadpolitics.com. They've got a little bit about it. Former government intelligence were able to track Hodge to the Antolia Doner Kebab House in Albuquerque. He arrived in the city by an unknown means of travel. The kebab shop where Hodge was geolocated is owned by Mr. Mehmet Kokangal, apologies to the pronunciation, a Turkish national from the city of Adana, which is a well-known Islamic State terrorist hotbed. Blah, 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 blah. FBI counterterrorism analyst with knowledge of the investigation, confirmed that Kohangel is on the State Department terror watch list. He may have taken tracks to cover his social media. The day of his meeting with Hodge, he posted a photograph of a midday motorcycle ride, an odd activity for the busy owner of 2 restaurants. Okay, there's quite a bit to unpack there. Yep. It doesn't look like there was a photo. It looks like allegedly he was geolocated.
I think that they have I think what they're suggesting is that he's checked in at the kebab restaurant or something. But if he never went there, how would he have done that?
I like that the day of his meeting, he took a motorcycle ride.
Where would you have the time?
Yeah, where would you have the time? It's a really compressed photo of his motorcycle ride. And look, I don't think he's riding it because he's just posing on it awkwardly. And he's not wearing a helmet or any sort of motorcycle gear. So he lives on the edge.
Now,
further analysis of the photo shows that it wasn't taken on October 3rd. It's older. What the fuck? They're just doing deep dives into this. Oh, God, so are we. All right.
But, Robert, you own a small business.
Yep.
Do you have time for motorcycle rides?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, you've got time for podcasts.
Yeah, I could be doing that right now instead of this, basically. I don't want to be doing that. I'd rather be doing this.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah, it doesn't look like there was any photo of him eating a kebab.
No. The plot unthickens significantly. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, the fact that there was no proof that he ever had the kebab, but this kebab was proof that he was with ISIS, and that he'd posted something like, oh, yeah, trans people are people too, was proof that he was Antifa. And that was the Antifa-ISIS connection. Yes. That's what it was all hinged on. It's so stupid. And some of these people were in the Trump, like they were in the administration, some of the people pushing this.
Yeah, you forget how dumb a lot of this shit is until you really unpack it and you realize that, fuck, there are idiots everywhere. Completely in charge of all this. Another connection, he had previously lived and worked in the casino industry on the Gold Coast of Australia. Stephen Paddock's girlfriend, Mary Lou Danley, likewise previously lived and worked in the casino industry on the Gold Coast of Australia. So that's his Paddock connection.
Yeah, they both were connected to casinos.
Casino in the Gold Coast of Australia.
Yeah.
Gold Coast, Australia. I wonder how many people work in Gold Coast casinos.
Probably a few.
Is there only one casino on the... No, there's a few, isn't there?
I think there's a couple.
Anyway.
But a lot of moving parts to a casino. And I would say that there's probably quite a few people in Las Vegas who've worked in casinos. And if they've lived elsewhere in the world, they may have worked in casinos there as well.
Las Vegas, some say Las Vegas is the casino capital of the world. So if I worked in a casino and I wanted to continue my career, I'd be heading to Vegas, baby.
One of the other people that popped up in the media briefly and then sort of disappeared, there's a lot of conspiracy stuff around still, was the security guard, Jesus Campos or Jesus Campos. So he was the guard that I think he was first on the scene in the hotel room. He got up there and Paddock had cameras set up outside his room so he could see people coming, and Paddock opened fire on him. And so I think he was shot in the leg, but he made some statements to the media sort of immediately and then went quiet.
And then he was on Ellen, wasn't he?
Yeah, he went on Ellen and sort of told his story. And this was another thing where, because in the immediate aftermath of one of these things, people will say things, and then as time goes on, the investigators piece together an exact timeline. And so you've got originally him being like, oh, I got there at 9:59. And then they're like, well, we've put together all of the things. And actually he got there, at 10:04.
Yeah.
That's like, well, what happened in that 5 minutes? It's like, he might have got the time wrong in the second, just after he'd been shot in the leg. Or whatever, just after he'd at least been shot at, right? He'd get things exactly right?
Yeah, there's one thing that when there's a lot of chaotic things happening around you, you're not really getting the details noted down in your little notebook.
But yeah, the thing with him though as well was he went on Ellen and then he didn't do any more media. And they're like, this guy was, all over the media initially, and then he was disappeared. It's like, well, he wasn't all over the media. He was he did some interviews on the scene, and then he was on Ellen, and then
he got cancelled because he was on Ellen.
There may have been a situation where by 2017 it was well established that people involved in mass shootings are going to be massively harassed by the likes of Alex Jones and his followers. So it's possible that he was advised to maybe step away because of that, which he would have experienced some of that just from having gone on Ellen. But they're like, this guy completely disappeared. And I saw stuff on Reddit where they're like, oh, here's this article from like a few years later where he was at a basketball game. He was introduced as like the hero of in the crowd today, we've got the Las Vegas hero, Jesus Campos. And they're like, so besides that one time that he was in public, he's completely disappeared.
And what more do we need from him as the public? Like once he's got on Ellen, there's nowhere else to go.
Oh, well, what they need from these people is for them to be like, oh yeah, I'm a crisis actor. I admit it. You wouldn't get any more work.
You've really blown up your spot once you admit it. And that's kind of thinking back to the Bill Gates thing on that, that guy was talking about, they're always thrusting him onto us. And, why do we always hear about Sandy Hook and why are we not hearing about this guy? And it's a completely fabricated or constructed world where whatever little issue they have in their brain at that moment, we're either talking about it too much or not talking about it enough. But either way, they're angry about it.
Yeah.
But yeah, like there is no reason for this guy to ever be anywhere in the media.
Yeah, I mean, and that guide's both of those things for them. It's like he was everywhere and then he was nowhere. Like it's too much, it's not enough. Like, they're not happy.
And there's kind of a lesson I'm sort of thinking about the Brian Hodge one where, he tried to actively kind of get some media out of it. And then, as you said, these days, if you're anywhere near a mass shooting, you're probably going to be smeared with something and attacked by cookers. Thank you, Tom Tanuki, for that turn of phrase. So, like, yeah, you insert yourself in and you get attacked, then you go, shit, I need to get out of this. So you stop doing anything because the cookers will get you. Anything else about Las Vegas? I mean, there's obviously lots, multiple shooter theories as well.
Yeah, which is also at the time, like I think even the police chief was like, this can't have been one person. But I think, that's like in the moment. And also, I think he's referring to the fact that, this guy had so many guns.
He had a lot of guns.
Oh, there were a couple of things that I saw that jumped out at me actually, just looking back over stuff. One was another one of those, where did that guy go? And it's like, the brother of Paddock, who was in the media afterwards. He was like, he wasn't political. But I think he also said he wasn't that interested in guns. And then it turns out that like he'd been buying guns since the 80s. But they're like, we never hear from this brother anymore. It's like the brother got picked up on child porn charges. So I think after that, he was probably like, I'm going to stop doing interviews.
Yeah. And also there's probably, he's less appealing to your news networks at that point.
Yeah.
The multiple shooters one comes up with people doing like acoustic, what do they call it? Like acoustic forensics or seeing all the testimonies of people there at the time, there's multiple shooters. People talking about on social media, multiple shooters. I saw one thing, it was like a compilation of people talking about multiple shooters and just a guy like posting to Facebook or something. And he was, saying, there definitely was, we were here and, we could hear the shots. And he panned around to his girlfriend or his sister or something. And she was like looking distraught. And I think they were distraught because people were calling them liars. But I imagine, if you live anywhere near a city, you hear something. It's so hard to know where sounds come from. Like somewhere in Las Vegas with that much noise going around. Of course, it's going to sound like there's multiple shooters. It's going to be really chaotic. And in the moment, like you could be convinced, if you've ever lived in a house where there's like an alleyway next door, you'll be convinced there's a sound coming from one direction, and then you walk outside and it's nowhere near that direction. Like it's pretty common. But that, has never been let go that, there has to be because people said there was at the time.
So yeah, that's our Las Vegas revisiting. We could also briefly revisit Sandy Hook. which has been in the news, as you mentioned, purely because of Alex Jones, who's having to pay through the nose for spreading lies about this stuff. But I think the interesting thing that came out of all of those Alex Jones trials is just the sheer amount of cash he made out of it. Obviously, we knew he was making money, but I think people were still surprised how much money they were making. And it does seem like, they deny this, but it does seem like that they saw the numbers that their Sandy Hook coverage did and were like, well, let's keep doing this. That's like not entirely borne out from the evidence that's been provided, because they withheld heaps of evidence. The fact that from what we know, and that we also know that they, withheld stuff, I think we can say that that's what they did. They saw how well it did. And they're like, well, this is doing numbers. They didn't see that something was doing numbers and were like, oh, we should stop doing this. It's morally wrong.
So there's an ongoing trial at the moment. The second of the, not trials, it's the, what do you call it?
It's a hearing. It's a damages hearing. So with both of these defamation cases, because they were so uncooperative in providing the documents that they needed to, the courts were just issued a judgment that they'd lost the case. And so these trials are all about determining how much money they need to pay. So the last one was like 50 million plus, and this one I think also doesn't look like it's going very well for him. From my reading,
he's just stopped showing up, hasn't he?
Well, yeah, I think he went on the stand for this one, but he hasn't been going to the thing. And also that sort of counts. I think that's probably going to count against him in the judgment, because it's like he's been going on his show and talking about how the judges are Satanists or whatever, but he hasn't been sitting in the courtroom and hearing the families talk. And I think that's the sort of thing that juries notice, is that he couldn't even be bothered to come and listen to the effect that he'd had. But he's like, there's been days when he's been outside the courtroom, so he just had to walk in. It's not like he was far away.
Yeah, he was right there. Jonesy. We'll probably talk about him a little bit in the news show as well, so patrons, stay tuned for that. Do you want to add anything, or are we going to wrap this baby up, Cam?
Let's wrap it up in a delicious New Mexico kebab.
Man, I live in a town that does not have a kebab anywhere.
Well, Robbo, as a small business owner, you could be the change that you want to see in the world.
I don't really want to become a kebabman other than eat kebabs.
I guess that's the thing about a kebab. There's a lot of infrastructure. You've got to have the turning thing.
Yeah.
A pitta warmer.
You got to have a pitta warmer. You got to have some sort of Bain Marie or like display for your accoutrement and your condiments. I'm not becoming a kebab mogul. Got to get my motorbike.
The other thing is, the meat spinner, the Bain Marie, buying all of those things retail. Like, that's just...
Yeah, there's no other way to get them. Got to piece them piece by piece.
All right. Well, that's our show. If people want to find us, we're on Twitter, Hypothepod. We are on Patreon, also Hypothepod, I believe, or Hypothetical Institute. Let it be a little adventure. Thank you to Tammy.
Yep. Thank you.
Robbo, where can they find you?
Just come into Westport and buy a beer at Short Jaw Brewery. And I guess I'll have a time on Twitter, but my Twitter sucks. You don't want to look at it. There's nothing of use for anyone on that.
Behind the bar, slinging falafel at Short Jaw Brewery. Come in for a free falafel.
Cam, where are you?
You can find me on Twitter at Sexenheimer, and I would say that unlike Robbo's Twitter, my Twitter's amazing. And you can find me on 3CR, 4:30 p.m. on Thursdays on the Yerna Passaran show, which you can also find on podcasts and things.
Yeah.
And Salty, you can find at The Salt on Twitch. Even though he's got a headache, we will still plug his Twitch.
Yeah, absolutely. All right.
Alrighty. See you later,
everyone. Bye.
Don't worry about a thing, except if all our world leaders are alien reptilians. I said don't worry about a thing, except maybe the fluoride in our water supply contains mind-altering drugs. Don't worry about a thing, except whether or not Port Arthur was a false flag operation in which to disarm Australia. lie buried tall at the end of strawberry fields forever. Ooh, don't worry about a thing. Except not only did Bush do 9/11, but he also keeps the planes out in Area 51, which, let's not forget, where all of the aliens are. Don't worry about a thing. Except Donald Trump is clearly a woman, and you're just blind if you can't see that. Why don't you open your eyes?